Hello and welcome to the Meet the Parents podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Meet the Parents podcast. We're back again with 30 odd minutes of discussion from some of the UK's best parent bloggers. Tonight I'm joined by Dave, aka the Dadventurer. Evening, sir.
Evening. So it's a bit of a slack week. You say the best parent bloggers and then you introduce me. Thanks.
No comment. In this week's episode, we're going to look back into the mists of time and talk about some of the things that have changed in our lives since we became dads, from our bodies to our outlooks on life. Now, Dave, you celebrated a birthday just this week, so congratulations, or should that be commiserations? I'm never quite sure.
Thank you. A bit of both, I would say.
If anyone wants to work out how many years old you are as a big football fan, well, a fan of Aston Villa anyway, you were born in the same month that two of the more tragic events in football history occurred, so Bradford's Valley Parade fire and the Heysel Stadium disaster. But you're also 5 days younger than pop star Lily Allen, so that's okay then.
That's some interesting facts there. I can't say that was on the tip of my tongue.
So this is a bit like This Is Your Life, isn't it? I should probably present you with a big red book at the end of this podcast.
Maybe it should be like a big red blog. That'd be better, wouldn't it, if we're all online and digital nowadays?
Anyhow, you've also recently written a post about how becoming a dad has led you to developing something of a dad bod. Although, in fairness, you're not exactly Monty Python's Mr. Creosote. Unlike me. I mean, you know that saying about how the camera adds £10? Well, I'm probably permanently wearing about 4 of them, so...
That's being harsh on yourself. It's at least 2.
Thanks. But, you know, fatherhood and a six-pack don't make for easy bedfellows, unless it's a six-pack of Belgian beer, in which case bring it on. Now, in your post, you talked about 4 things that you want to change to regain your former physique, which I'm led to believe would have given a Terminator-era Arnold Schwarzenegger a run for his money. So number 1, that was snacking, wasn't it? So talk us through the problem and what you're intending to do about it.
Yeah, so since becoming a stay-at-home dad, which is nearly a year to the day, so congratulations me for that, for not killing the toddler. That's always good. So yeah, I'm finding that to alleviate boredom to an extent, and because Toddler L likes to feed me her own snacks, I'm just eating more. So I still eat pretty well when it comes to breakfast, dinner and tea. But it's the snacking in between. It's the crisps, it's the chocolate, it's the raisins, all of these things which I eat when I'm just sat watching TV or I'm playing with Elle type thing. So what I'm obviously needing to do is cut out those snacks and just stay away from the bad cupboard which houses all of those naughty things.
So do you find that you're snacking more now since you became a stay-at-home dad?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously before, when I used to work, it was one of those things where you'd have to go out and actually buy the stuff yourself. So that meant leaving the office and spending your own money and whatever. But now, because things just are bought in bulk on a supermarket shop, it's just that there's 12 pack of Mars bars in there and some mini cheddars and all of that. So I'll go once and then think, oh, that was quite nice, I'll go again, and then third time, and then I'm sat on the settee with crisp packets around me, just feeling like Jabba the Hutt basically,
and presumably blaming it on Elle when Hay gets home.
Well, what I do is I put all of the crisp packets and stuff to the bottom of the bin so she doesn't know.
And do you also find that you end up finishing off Elle's meals?
Yeah, definitely. It's like at the moment we're making risotto quite often because we've got a new cooker thing, and like I'm sat there watching Elle eat, going, "Nah, you don't want to finish that, do you? Just stop there." And as soon as she's finished, I'm there with my fork eating the rest of it.
Yeah, I know.
How about yourself?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes it's a little bit disappointing when they do finish certain meals, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, I wanted some of that. No, I have to admit that even though I can't claim the excuse of being at home all day, I do have a bit of a habit of lapsing into some really bad snacking habits, particularly when I'm busy at work, which is most of the time, or when I'm tired, which, as a father of 3 is pretty much all of the time. When I was younger, I used to burn off all the extra calories quite easily, and that's categorically not the case anymore. And I have to admit, I'm a good couple of stone heavier than I once was. Now, the second thing on your list was about getting back into shape by playing six-a-side footy again. So, talk us through the challenges of trying to fit in exercise now that you're a dad, and have you found that becoming a stay-at-home dad has made any difference to how hard it is to squeeze in, that extra workout?
I think it's just about trying to balance everything. So if I sort of look at what I've got on a daily basis, obviously priority 1 is looking after Elle. Priority 2 I see as the blog/writing as a form of income for us. Third is doing some stuff around the house, whether that's hoovering or putting the washing in the machine or a few things like that. And then then you're talking about TV programs, that probably comes in at 4. And then exercise, is maybe down like 12 on the list. It's just about fitting everything you can into the day. And unfortunately, exercise is just one of them things which I don't really have the motivation to do, during the times when Elle's napping or in the evening, that type of thing.
You were playing football quite a lot before, weren't you?
So for the past few years, I've been playing six-a-side on a Monday evening, but since Christmas, I think I've played like 3 times. And this is a weekly thing. So I think it's just the motivation and just thinking, let me get out the house for an hour and just go and play football. I think it's just pure laziness that I haven't done recently.
It's funny what you say about exercise being, round about number 12 on your list. For me, I'd be lucky if it was that high. And I think, if I'm being honest, getting exercise has been one of the biggest difficulties I've had since becoming a dad. I used to be a pretty sporty person. When I look back to my younger days, I played American football for my university. I used to play badminton every week and a lot of table football. That counts as a sport, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Then through my 20s, I played an obscure but really rather brilliant sport called korfball.
It doesn't count if you just make names up of sports, Tim. That doesn't make you sporty.
Now, it's a real sport, but admittedly not many people have heard of it. It's
a real sport which only one person has ever played.
It's a sport that originates in Holland, but it's played in a lot of British universities in particular. And basically, it's a cross between basketball and netball. It's played 8-a-side, and its claim to fame, or its unique feature, is that it's the only sport in the world that has to be played in mixed teams. So 4 male, 4 female players aside, and now you start to see some of the attraction of it.
Interesting.
And it's also because it's it's a niche sport, let's call it that. Most people don't take it too seriously, so it's a chance to have a bit of a run around, be a bit competitive, and then basically have a laugh down the pub afterwards. But I would say, through my 20s, exercised quite a lot. But since then, as I moved into my 30s and then the decade beyond, I've definitely slowed down, and, both available time and inclination have significantly diminished. The kids came along, and it's often been hard enough to keep my eyes open while driving to work in the morning, let alone come home in the evening and do some exercise now.
I think that's the difficulty, isn't it, with when you're working full time, like you're away for 10, 11, 12 hours, and then last thing you want to do is come home and, go to the gym or anything like that.
And I know that when you say it out loud, I'm too tired, it does sound pretty feeble, and I guess in reality it probably is. But that's also just how life is for many parents, particularly working parents, and even as a stay-at-home dad or a stay-at-home mum, it's not as if you're sitting around doing nothing all day.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I found is that Heather and I used to do a lot of our sport together, and when you've got kids, that suddenly becomes much more difficult to do because you can't just up and leave the house of an evening. Closely linked to all that is step 3 of your master plan, which is to do more exercise at home. Now, if you'll forgive the pun, you're in pretty decent shape here already, aren't you, in terms of having equipment and such like around the house?
Yeah, exactly. We've got things like weights and yoga mats, and Hayley decided a few years ago to splash out and buy a treadmill. So we've got like a proper massive gym-sized treadmill in the living room, which is a nice design feature. So yeah, all I really need to do is start doing the exercise at home. We've got all of the equipment, it's just finding the time to do it. And I think it's so easy to say put Elle down for a nap and sit on the settee and watch The Flash or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that and have an hour to myself, whereas does it really take much to lift some weights for 15 minutes or go for a 20-minute run on the treadmill?
Yeah, I was going to say, doing a run on the treadmill while watching The Flash would surely make you feel somewhat inadequate.
Very true. Yeah. That'd almost make you not want to do it, wouldn't it?
But you're right, being able to exercise at home is definitely a good way to get around the expense and effort of having to go to the gym. I mean, we haven't got as much kit in our house as you do, although we do have an exercise bike that we've had for, I don't know how long it is actually, donkey's years. And since the kids came along, I have to admit that its primary purpose has been more of something to hang clothes on than anything else. One thing I do have, or have had recently, which has made a big difference, is a Fitbit. Heather bought it for me for Christmas in a not particularly subtle attempt to encourage me to get off the sofa a bit more. But it's actually been the perfect gadget for me, as someone who realistically is never going to commit to going to the gym. So it just sits there on my wrist as a constant reminder to try to do that little bit extra, kind of little and often. So now I use the stairs instead of escalators or lifts. I park at the far end of the car park at work. When I'm in London, I get off the tube a stop or two earlier and walk the extra distance. Now, none of these are big things, but it's surprising how quickly they all add up. And I often find myself creating excuses to go out for a walk at weekends and that sort of thing. And I have to admit, actually, there's a kind of a gaming element to it as well that also appeals to me. So you can set yourself goals and compete in challenges against other people, which is often all the incentive I need to walk that little bit further or do a couple of extra laps of the office or things like that. Yes, my life is that sad.
Ultimately, it's about finding your own motivation, isn't it? And whether that's against yourself or whether that's against other people, or whether it's because Heidi's quite big on that type of thing, because she got a Fitbit not too long ago, and it's she's really keen just to sort of beat her score from the previous day and things, and it's whatever motivation you can get, isn't it?
The final element of your plan is it's not so much what you eat as what you drink. So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to sound a bit like an alcoholic here, but I'm not in any shape or form. I hardly drink as it happens, but what I've noticed that since becoming a dad, I do drink more often than I used to. And, here we're talking about, 2 bottles of beer every week or something. It's not huge amounts, but for me, it's the liquid calories. That's, call it a couple of hundred or whatever extra calories per week, and then throw in the likes of a couple of cans of Coke or a bottle of Coke or whatever during the week, which I don't tend to normally have. It's sort of juice or squashes, really. So the way I'm viewing it is, that could be an extra 1,000 calories every week extra, which I'm having just through drinks, which does nothing for my diet and is just adding the liquid calories.
Yeah, now I did a quick bit of research on this earlier, and I discovered that a can of regular Coke contains something like 140 calories, and that compares with a small glass of wine, which is about 160 calories, and a typical pint of beer, which is more like 200. And that's equivalent to about the amount of energy you burn running for 15 minutes. Or, if you want to put it another way, drinking 3 pints of beer or half a bottle of wine, say, is like having an extra lunch. And that's quite scary when you think about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially when I think about how much I like my wine and my Belgian beers. Or maybe actually what I need to do is to forego lunch completely and switch to a liquid diet. Or maybe not.
It's an interesting thing. You could maybe do it for a couple of weeks and blog about it and see what happens. A bit like, was it Morgan Spurlock who did the McDonald's thing?
Yeah, Supersize Me.
Yeah, maybe do that. Super Beer Me or something like that.
God, now I remember watching that when it first came out and thinking, because he did it for about a month, didn't he? And the effect it had on him visibly was actually quite shocking, wasn't it?
It was, and I remember them saying about how it looked like he had a liver of an alcoholic and he'd not been drinking. It was literally just the McDonald's.
Now, I suppose the idea of switching to a liquid diet and then blogging about it would be interesting in principle, but probably when you think about it, quite difficult to do in practice. I'm not sure how good my typing would be after on a liquid diet.
You need to get one of those speech ones. Well, actually, that's probably bad as well, isn't it? Because you'd just be like slurring all the time.
But anyway, that's Dave and Tim's guide to saying goodbye to the moobs and the dad bod. So eat less, drink less, exercise more. That's pretty revolutionary stuff, I think. I'm sure no one's ever thought of that before. Now, would you just mind passing me the Slim Fast, Dave? First came the Olympic Games. Then came the Paralympics and the Invictus Games. Now, brought to you by a governing body with even less integrity than FIFA, comes the Toddler Hunger Games. Watch as children battle it out for viewers' entertainment in a variety of events, every bit as gruesome as the books after which they're named. In the artistic gymnastics, the beam is replaced by the windowsill walk. In track and field, the discus has been superseded by the tomato soup bowl throw. And if you thought wheelchair rugby was rough, just wait until you've seen baby buggy ball. Coming to a TV near you, summer 2016. No children were harmed in the creation of the Toddler Hunger Games, although some adults had to be taken away by men in white coats. Being a dad changes you, and it's definitely brought out different sides to me. Now, as an example, anyone who has ever seen me shuffle awkwardly across a dance floor will know that I'm not so much Anton du Bec as Anton du Rec. Now, when the lights go down and the music starts up, that blur of motion you see is me legging it to the bar. But what I found is that when I'm around the kids, and Cara in particular, that completely changes. So I wrote a post the other week about how she got me to dance with her while we were queuing for a ride at Legoland. And, you know, to be honest, I thought nothing of twirling her around and dancing with her in a way that I would never have done years ago. And anyone who's ever heard any of the parody songs that appear on a regular basis on my blog will know that I'm much more of a Bernie Taupin than an Elton John. I can write a pretty decent lyric, but I can't hold a tune to save my life. But when we're travelling in the car together and Cara declares that it's time for a family sing, as she puts it, we all sing. What about you, Dave? Is there anything you find that you do now with Elle that you wouldn't ever have dreamed of doing before she was born?
That's a good question. I think similar to what you were saying, it's that doing what makes your kid happy versus, you know, the embarrassment factor. So I'd be totally the same when it comes to, you know, singing or dancing or whatever. Obviously, Elle's 21 months now, so she's a tiny bit on the young side for that type of thing. But I think it's more of like, you know, if you're walking around and you're singing. I found myself, I was walking the dog earlier and was carrying her because she was bored of walking. And as we were walking, we were just sort of like pointing out trees and grass and things like that. And then I found myself singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat to her. So I think it's things like that where you forget about other people and it's about you and her. And you do things that will make them happy no matter what situation you're in.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, the focus becomes less about what other people might be thinking of you and much more on the relationship you have with your kids.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? I think there's probably still quite a few people out there that wouldn't necessarily, what they do in the house is probably different to what they do outside of the house. I think for a lot of people, appearances still matter. And I think it'd be great if more people just didn't really care about what other people thought, you know, in all walks of life, really.
I completely agree. I guess something else that's definitely changed in the past few years is that I've become, I guess, a bit less cavalier about stuff and a bit more cautious. Now, probably the best example of that is my driving. As you know, Dave, I do like my fast cars, but equally, I definitely drive slower these days and more cautiously than I used to, you know, particularly in areas where there might be kids around, you know, around schools and town and so on. And I'm definitely a lot more patient and tolerant than I used to be. I don't react to idiots who cut me up or jump queues quite as, let's say, vociferously as I used to. And you know, having kids of my own, I think, was a real tipping point in changing my behaviour. And I have to say, in a way, I don't think that would have happened if we'd stayed childless. Now, Dave, are there any examples you can think of ways that you've become maybe a bit more conservative or a bit more cautious since Elle was born?
I think, like, obviously, say the driving aspect and things like that, you don't want to put your, you know, the fruit of your loins in danger. So you're a little bit more wary of things along those lines. I wouldn't necessarily call myself cautious, though, when it comes to sort of like pushing Elle forward. So it's sort of like a running joke at the moment through social media with a couple of people that I've always been very willing to let Elle do what she wants to do. So, she was probably a year old or whatever, and she'd be climbing on the windowsill and just sitting there watching TV. Or, today, for instance, she learned to climb in and out of a high chair, which I'm more than comfortable with her doing that type of thing, because I still know I'm in control. And if she is to fall or whatever, it's, I see it as a learning curve. So I'll go to the park and I'll see people being really like hands on with the kids and stuff, but that's not me. So whether that makes me cautious or not, I'm not really sure. I'm probably still more of a cavalier type person, as you call it.
When Isaac was born and he was growing up, we tried to be, I think, quite similar to you. So it's finding that balance between letting them make their own mistakes and learning from them, but obviously without jeopardising their safety.
Yeah.
And one of the things we've found since Toby, and then with Cara as well, is that with the second and third child, you become even more relaxed. So when you're in the playground, with the first child, you're hovering relatively close by. By the time the third child comes along, it's like, yeah, just whatever. As long as you don't kill yourself, then you're fine. Yeah, one other thing that's changed, and I bet is again true for a lot of parents, whether it's mums or dads, is that I've become used to sleeping quite a bit less than I used to. Now, pre-kids, I used to get a decent 7 hours of sleep a night, and then nowadays I've settled into a rhythm of averaging probably more like 6 hours a night, and then that's often worse quality sleep because we usually end up with Cara sleeping between us at some point, and Toby is a frequent visitor to our bed in that final hour before my alarm goes off. So I've definitely become used to getting by on less and worse quality sleep, although when the kids were younger it was worse. I mean, I remember we basically had a 6-year stretch where we always had a 2-year-old or younger in the house needing a feed or a new nappy, or struggling with just basically having bad sleeping habits. And I guess the flip side of that is that as I've gotten older, I can't just bounce out of bed after 2 to 3 hours sleep and do a full day's work, the way I used to in my 20s. And if I even attempt that, I end up shuffling around like a zombie and then giving up soon after lunchtime. Although some would say that's what I do on a normal day anyway, so it's hard to tell the difference. Have you found anything similar, Dave, in terms of sleeping patterns changing?
I'm quite lucky that Elle sort of will sleep from 7:30 through to 7:30, sometimes a little bit later. So
I hate you.
Obviously there was the earlier days. I don't think she slept through until she was sort of like 10, 11 months, something like that. So there has always been that getting up in the night, but because Hayley breastfed, it was never really me that did that, obviously. So my sleep hasn't really changed much, apart from I probably sleep deeper than I used to do, which the missus hates me for. But apart from that, no, not really. I think obviously you can tell when there's been a disturbed night. If you had to get up once or twice just to settle her, you can sort of feel that in the morning. But luckily I've not had too bad with that.
Oh, you're a lucky man, Dave. I guess one final thing that's definitely changed about me, and I don't know if it's so much whether it's a result of being a parent or just generally being a bit older now and being more comfortable in my own skin, but for sure when I was younger I used to worry a lot more about what people thought of me, trying to be what I thought people wanted me to be. Nowadays to be honest, I don't really care. I accept that not everyone's going to like me, and I've stopped trying to please all of the people all of the time. I guess I've grown up a bit. Take me or leave me, and that's it. So, what about you, Dave? Can you think of any other ways other than the ones we've talked about already that's in which you've changed since you've become a dad?
I've got a few more grey hairs. I've been noticing them recently, which I'm gonna put down to that. I think it's difficult, isn't it? I think there's areas where I know I need to improve, particularly around patience and not getting stressed as much. So they're things that I need to know, and they're things I know I need to work on more. So not snapping at Elle if she's wanting to take me into the kitchen for the 12th time in an hour in order to get more food or something like that. I think when you've got a kid and you're the one who's with them during the day, you've got to be a bit more organised. So I found that I've always been quite a regimental person when it comes to planning and organising. But obviously when you go out, you need to make sure you've got your nappy and your wet wipes and your snacks and your drink and stuff like that. So I think that's something which has continued, just being organised and making sure you've got everything you need to make it as easy as possible when you are out with a little one.
So there you have it, folks. In a stunning revelation that I'm sure no one else has ever thought of, becoming a father changes you as a person. And on that bombshell, it's time to move on. We're going to finish tonight with something a bit different. Instead of chatting in detail about a topic, we're going to go for a series of rapid-fire questions and answers. So, the 30 seconds maximum per answer. So, in keeping with this week's theme of things that have changed since we became dads, Dave and I are, in turn, going to name one thing that has changed in a variety of situations. I've no idea whether this is going to work, but here goes nothing. Let's start by naming one thing that you've stopped doing or that you do much less of since becoming a dad that you really miss.
I would say playing FIFA on the PlayStation. Not only did the PlayStation break and I've not got the money to replace it with a new one, but when I did have it working, Elle would often sit on my knee and press buttons and make me kick the ball when I didn't want to and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I miss those days as well, but I miss big or spontaneous holidays. It used to be that if we wanted to go on holiday, we didn't have to plan out every detail of every day in intricate detail. Now, my favourite holidays used to be big road trips where we just hired a car and pitched up somewhere random every night, and there is no way we are doing that now with 3 kids in tow. So, next question. So, can you name one thing that you've stopped doing since becoming a dad that you don't miss at all?
I would say that for me, it is probably household chores. We don't clean and tidy as much as we used to because it just gets made a mess the next day. So there's things like we've sacked off ironing, for instance. So what's the point of ironing?
So for me, I think it's the weekly food shop. Now, I do love a bit of retail therapy, but doing the weekly grocery shop always used to kind of drag our weekends down. So now we just order stuff online and get everything delivered. Simple.
That's brilliant. We've started doing that recently. It's the best way.
So, next question. Name one thing that you find you're more tolerant of since you became a dad.
Other kids and other parents, I'd probably say. Before having a kid myself, I didn't realise what a hassle and stress and annoyance kids can be. So I think I'm now more tolerant of other kids, although that's not to say I necessarily like other people's kids, but we won't talk about that just now.
Yeah, I'm the same, and I think particularly it's being more tolerant of other parents who are struggling to control either noisy or misbehaving kids. And now that I'm a parent myself, I get that now. I've been there myself. I know what it's like. And I know that kids sometimes are just impossible to keep quiet, no matter how well they've been brought up. In a slightly different vein, can you name one thing that you're really looking forward to doing when Elle's a bit older? And how old will she have to be for you to do it?
I think playing sports would be a good one. I'm quite a sporty person myself, or at least I used to be, going on to our previous conversation, and remember with my mum in particular, we used to do a lot of badminton and tennis and stuff like that. So I think when she gets to the age where I can whoop her ass at sports, that'd be quite good. So what, maybe 10 upwards?
Yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to. And now, for us, we've been wanting to do Disney. We've been waiting for Cara to be old enough to fully enjoy and, to remember it, and for the boys to still be young enough not to find it horribly uncool. And we're finally doing it this summer because we're going to Disneyland Paris. So, with the kids now aged between 4 and 8, I think we're in that window where the time is right. And then, finally, can you name the one thing that you would do if you had a child-free, wife-free day to yourself with no strings attached? And please, it needs to be something that won't result in divorce if Hay hears you say it.
No, that's got rid of my top 3 answers then. I would probably say it would be really boring. I'd probably be sat in my boxes watching football on the TV, eating food or something like that.
That sounds perfectly worthy to me. Mine's similarly dull. I'd just have a box set day. I've got so much stuff backed up on our Skybox that I keep saying I'm going to watch eventually, but have never gotten around to watch 18 months later. And it'd be great to put a proper dent in that. That is horribly dull, but I would love to do that.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like parenting can be so stressful and busy that I think if you've got rid of the rest of the family, you just want to veg and just chill out.
And so at the end of that round, Dave and I have both scored 11 points with no passes. Now hang on, that's a completely different thing, isn't it? Before we go, anything new and exciting happening in your world, Dave? You know, like a panic-inducing national radio interview or anything?
Well, now you mention it, I had a panic-inducing national radio thing on Friday. I was on BBC Local Radio talking about parenting advice. So this was a Friday show which went out across 40 plus local radio stations. So it was my second radio gig, so I'm still quite new to the whole thing. So nerve-wracking and everything like that. But I think it went okay in the end. It's just sort of a general chat really about advice I've got from my parents, how I see advice being a parent blogger, how I give advice to other people, and the advice I'd give to Elle.
Anything else that's been up with you this last week or so?
We had a short break in Hampshire, which was quite good. Went down to Portsmouth and Isle of Wight for a couple of days as part of a blog review, so that was pretty awesome and really nice weather.
Yeah, excellent timing for it.
Exactly. How about yourself?
This week it's been, I guess it's been a little bit about starting my new job, but actually it's mostly been about Cara's birthday, which was last Thursday. So, we had a little celebration with my family over the bank holiday weekend. I then repainted her room pink, as chosen by her. We built her a little vanity table for her room, which she adores. And then she had a birthday party proper this weekend. So, lots of presents for her to open, including some bling pink with fake diamond looking headphones and a new ballet dress. So all good from our perspective.
Good stuff.
And that's it for this episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. We'll be back again next week, but in the meantime, here's where you can find us online.
I am at thedadventurer.com and on Twitter at @the_dadventurer.
And I am at slouchingtowardsthatcham.com and I'm on Twitter at ThatchamDad. Now you can download this podcast on iTunes and on Android devices, on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com and via a variety of podcasting apps. Do please give us a follow as well on Twitter at ParentsPodcast and Facebook at facebook.com/meettheparentspodcast. So thank you for listening and do please join us again next week. Good night.